Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being at your state capitol here in Atlanta, Georgia. We have a lot of serious things that are happening right here in the state as well as around the world. And when I was a youth growing up here in Atlanta, Georgia, I would see young people and college students protesting different issues all of the time. But then, I guess for about 10 years, I haven't seen the college students out there making their voice be heard. I said, wow, things have changed, but I must change my mind now because about a year ago, I started seeing young people protesting the evils of the world, the problems that they saw that existed even on their own college campuses and around the world. Today, I'm honored to introduce some young people who are from the Georgia Gwinnett College in Lawrenceville, Georgia. And they have taken on an issue that saddens me. It's about persecution and kidnapping in Japan. Mr. John Treyberg will speak to us in a few minutes. He is the president of the student body of the Gwinnett College, Georgia Gwinnett College in Lawrenceville. And he will be embarking on a mission with Joshua Wildman, another student. And they will take a 2,300-mile cycle tour to protest the different problems that are going on. At this time, I want Doug Burton to come up and give us an overview, and as soon as that ends, we will hear from Unique.
Thank you, Senator James.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everyone, for coming today. We'll have Unique here in just a few minutes. It's our honor to be here to commend these brave young men, John Sagen Tranberg and Josh Wildman, who are doing a historic bike ride across America to raise awareness about a religious persecution problem in Japan that's been going on for 40 years. Now, we celebrate religious freedom in America. In this country, you can believe whatever you want to believe. You can be whoever you want to be, right? And that is what has made this country great. And John Tranberg is going to tell you why he has named his trip a trip tour de cause for faith, freedom, and family. And these young ladies, these beautiful ladies behind us, are supporters of his ride. They are members of a group called the Women's Federation for World Peace of Georgia. And they are Japanese citizens wearing kimonos to drive home the fact that this religious persecution of Unification Church members is particularly egregious in the nation of Japan, and most of the victims are women. Unfortunately, because of misrepresentation in the media and bigotry and opposition for political reasons, parents in Japan are sometimes enraged by false media reports to actually pay kidnappers to abduct their own children and hold them hostage and then forcibly change their beliefs, break down their belief system, break their faith. It's called deprogramming. And I know about this experience because I went through it myself in 1976. It's a very painful, unpleasant experience. And when my parents paid for deprogrammers to kidnap me in Europe, where I joined the Unification Church, I was stunned that my parents would spend a lot of money to influence me about something that they could have talked to me about themselves. I was really heartbroken by this. And the thing that really bothered me is that my own mother, who was present at the time, she was really so outraged and so anxious that I thought she was on the verge of a nervous breakdown. And that's why I stayed with the deprogrammers for 6 weeks. Not because I believed what they were saying, because what they were saying was idiotic and nonsensical, but because I was scared for my own mom and I wanted her to be protected. In any case, the people who return to the Unification Church after these so-called deprogrammings, those who return marry, and they have great families. I have a fantastic wife from Japan, Mrs. Keiko Burton. I got 3 wonderful children. My family is maybe not as noble and as magnificent as the John and Sumiko Tranberg family in Atlanta, in Lawrenceville, Georgia, but I got a pretty good family. And I wouldn't have that family if I had left the Unification Church in 1976 and followed the insults and the cruel persuasion, the cruel harassment that I was getting in January of 1976. So that is why I'm here today. That is why we have to fight in America. John Tranberger is going to tell you when he gets here in just a few minutes. They're pedaling as fast as they can down the street. He's going to tell you that he met with Congressman Rob Woodall, his congressman for Lawrenceville, just a day before yesterday. And Congressman Woodall and 11 other U.S. congressmen met with John the same day and wished him well and signed his route map. I don't know if you've ever tried to see a U.S. congressman, but if you have, you know that you're lucky if you can see one congressman a day. It takes an appointment. But when 12 congressmen say, yeah, I want to see this young man, I want to see this young man, that means they care about this issue. We have to use moral suasion. We have to mobilize our friends on Capitol Hill, and we got to mobilize our friends in the nonprofit community to raise public awareness. And thank goodness John Tranberg and his friend Josh Wildman are going to do this for us.
Thank you very much. Let's give him a hand for explaining to us exactly what is going on in the world. The World Federation, the Women's Federation for World Peace, is made up of people from 172 nations. They are from all over the world. They are black, white, brown, yellow. They are every color, every nationality, and we come together in unity to call for peace. So I am very happy to be a part of the Women's Federation for World Peace. And that is why I am standing here today. Of course, I'm not Unification. I'm a Catholic and born right here in the United States. But I noticed one thing about this organization. You can be Baptist, Methodist, or any denomination. You can even be Hindu or any other strong religious group that believes in God. One nation, one world under God. And you can be a part of it. So I commend those who are here today.
One of the things that I like the most to see, and we as a religious community, I am the pastor of the Unification Church here in Georgia. And Senator James is a soldier who is always on the front lines when it comes to making sure that people's freedoms are kept. And so I just wanted to yet send another round of applause to Senator James for being such a leader of freedom in this country. We need leaders like Senator James. So thank you, Senator James, once again. And, you know, I'd also like to call, where's Dave Tranberg? I tell you what. Oh, hey, wait, Sagen is here. Okay, great. Well, really briefly, before we introduce Sagen, who is the man of the hour, I would just like to say that we are so proud of him in our community here. Like Senator James mentioned, we are a community that are of all walks of life, all nationalities, all nations, all colors. And in our local church here, we have over about 40 different nationalities just in our local congregation. And we're very proud of our brother, Sagen, who is taking on such a great mission to take his bike and travel around the country for the cause of religious freedom. So actually, if we don't have anyone else, I'd like to go ahead on and maybe welcome up our speaker, our dear brother, Mr. Sagen Tranberg, John Sagen Tranberg. Let's give him a round of applause.
Before I start, I did have a written speech, but before I start, just a sincere thank you to everyone who came out, who really made this happen. This is just a dream, it's a passion, it's something I love. And this is an issue that I've just been studying in college a little bit. And so to be able to tie the two together and get the community support is incredible. So thank you guys, everybody, for being able to come out and support. I'm not sure what has been spoken and said about me thus far, but my name is John Sagen Tranberg. I'm currently the student body president at Georgia Gwinnett College. And when I first entered Georgia Gwinnett College, I really went in with this mentality to just be who I was. The fact is, my parents have been Unification Church members for the largest part of their lives. And in the beginning, the way they met is through Reverend Sun Myung Moon himself. He asked them to introduce them to each other, and ever since then, they've been happily married. We're a family of 8. I'm one of 6 children, and we've all gone through unique challenges. One of mine was to be able to take a faith I was born into and to be able to inherit it and choose to follow it on my own. At some point in time, about 2-3 years ago, that is a choice that I consciously made, and it's something that I hold very dear. However, these days, whenever people join the Unification Church, as a religious minority, generally speaking, people don't notice too much. 30 years ago, this is a much different story. Hundreds of American citizens back in the 70s and 80s were abducted and harassed for weeks and months in an effort to break their faith. Most of the folks resisted this cruelty and returned to the Unification Church, got married, and raised fantastic children, many of which I'm incredibly good friends with and who have helped make this happen. And the people who were paid to abduct Unification Church members stopped doing it about 20 years ago, after several of them were arrested and went to jail. Now, in Japan, the abductions and faith-breaking still goes on, and no one has been prosecuted to date. The Japanese media has refused to report this cruel phenomenon to the public, and to date, I believe we have just over 4,000 Japanese citizens who have gone through this process. As for the United States of America, thank goodness we have the free press, and thank goodness that we have Americans who are proud and bold to be a part of this home, the home of freedom, home of faith, and the home of family. I see all these virtues embodied in my mother and my father. To be honest, I owe my parents for so many blessings that have come my way, especially for setting an example of hard work and for giving me an example of faith and a sense of vision. And the church culture has greatly benefited me as well. For the most part, I attribute a lot of my accomplishments, a lot of that I've been able to do, due to just the culture and the family that I've been raised in. But, as aforementioned, thousands of fellow believers in Japan are not as lucky as I am to be able to practice their faith freely. This is not to knock on the great people of Japan either. I love the culture and history of my mother's home country. A couple years ago, we toured southern Japan to northern Japan. We got to explore Japan just as I am about to explore the great United States of America, and it was fantastic. I love the Japanese people and the culture. I love both America and Japan. Religious freedom is guaranteed both in the US Constitution and also by the Japanese Constitution. The difference is, in Japan, the law is not enforced to give all citizens due process. I've read that in the great state of Georgia, we had a similar problem several decades back, as we might remember with the Civil Rights Movement. Now I'm making this right so I can tell a story that hasn't been told. I want to give a voice to the saints of every persecuted religious community in the world, and there are many. But I especially want to be able to honor the suffering saints of Japan who suffered more than 40 years almost in silence. And I want to be able to be that voice. I want to be able to be a young voice as well for my brothers and sisters in Japan. These are victims of unfounded fear, media misrepresentation, and the greed of lawyers. Today, the state of Georgia does its level best to give due process to every citizen. And where there are issues, I know absolutely that Senator Gonzales James is on top of them. Japan needs to do better. The Japanese government can do better, and they owe it to all their citizens to live up to their ideals of fair treatment for all, religious freedom for all. My mother is good. She comes from people who are good. So good, in fact, that they can, and I know they will, be better. Thank you guys very much. God bless.
This religious group is just unbelievable. I know in the United States you could never kidnap even your own child, put them in chains, put them in the basement or the attic, give them only water and bread just to break them. That is cruel, it is unusual treatment, and it's unacceptable. So I applaud you young men. My spirit will be going with you.
All right, that's just good.
So thank you very much.